We're live.
Great. Welcome to Creative Conference, Senate Education and House Education on S.727. We're picking up from a conversation we had, it seems like it was weeks ago, but I think it was this morning or even this afternoon. And the House has returned with language drafted, which we appreciate. And we're wondering if you would be so kind as to take us through that language.
All right, so as discussed,
just for clarification, Representative Conlon, I apologize for interrupting. Has that language been posted by or?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you don't mind posting it, that if you have it.
I don't have a digital copy of it, but I can. Someone has it.
Yeah, just have the committee assistant. That'd be great.
I don't think she's available
I
now.
have it.
Yeah, we have.
Do
you want me to send it to Daphne, Rep. Conlon?
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Should I do it right now?
Okay,
All right.
there you go.
Okay, so as discussed, the main withdrawal language is essentially the same as the House position coming into the conference committee. We didn't present any changes to you at 3 o'clock, and so therefore this language reflects that.
None of the changes that we,
Yeah,
Yes.
please.
Some of our changes were just like small, but you're just like, just stay with the House.
Oh, that's a really good point. So, because of the timeline that the drafter was under and her need to get this out, we did not incorporate the small dates, 45 days here, 6 days there, and no objection on our side to incorporate.
So I'm sorry, so I might be a little, so this represents the House passed version?
Yes.
You're okay with small things. The main thing is the board having the ability to handle that.
That's right. So this
you have to go back to your old.
That's right. This
So
goes.
is there anything else in there that aside from that?
We added nothing,
Okay,
but that includes your date changes in 45 days either, just due to drafting timelines.
yeah.
So you keep some of this.
And then we go to the carve-outs. Again, the same.
Pages.
Let's see, the carve-outs begin on okay, it appears to start on page 35.
So just for a moment, yeah, so starting on page 1, just to confirm, everything in section 3 is new language compared to what we passed in the Senate?
Are you talking to me?
Please.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to compete with Clifford the big red dog in the background. So the House, the language that I drafted for Representative Conlon is the same language lifted from the House proposal or as passed the House, but it is very different than the Senate passed version.
And that's why I'm looking, and I guess, and I understand that you haven't had time. I'm looking for things in yellow, and I'm looking for things like that, and I'm not seeing, right. I guess I was thinking we might see it in this, but we can go through the side by side. I guess I'm sorry, and I apologize if I was misleading. I was thinking that you guys were not going to return all the way back to your original proposal. Or pretty darn close to it.
Well, I'm not sure that is reflective of what we said. But again, we were under a tight drafting deadline. And I guess, the two sides are very similar up to a point. And then it really boils down to the path that is taken once it goes to the state level. And that's what we decided was at the crux of the issue. So that's why the side by side is as good a thing to look at as anything else.
Have you talked to Beth about what the highlights would look like? So it's like this is something maybe for Beth.
We're wrapping up the session.
Jim, you need to be muted.
No, but I can step out for a minute.
Beth, or Daphne, would you mute Jim? Thanks.
Because if we could see it, what the highlights, or if you could go through it, if you could go through it and tell us which ones. Or just say it's only about the board. Is there other ones?
So there's the side-by-side language really sort of it's the same differences.
Right.
Um,
But I'm just wondering, of the highlights, are you saying the only highlights that you disagree with are the ones that give the board that authority, or is there?
Well, and then the preceding ones that sort of headed in that direction. I mean, we both talk about, a plan. You left in much of our language as to what needs to be included in the plan. I don't think you added anything to that, other than the dates. But then we get to the review section, and that's where we diverge. We actually don't have the secretary playing the role. And that the review is done by the state board. But again,
And we went back and forth on that.
and again, issuing advisory opinions only. Yeah, you put it in your two-step process. Right.
So when you talk about the big difference, like the side by sides, highlighted, it's helpful. Like on page 6 of the side by side. Like this is what you're talking about, kind of heading in that direction. Like these, like up above was just the 90 days because we heard people like putting date time on something.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming this.
Yeah, that sort of thing, we appreciate you guys keeping it, staying attuned to putting in day deadlines.
But this is the board review. You don't want to have.
It's all about
Right.
veto power.
Right. But this is really the crux of it here, and anywhere else where it's similar stuff.
Right. I mean, you can sort of see on the side by side, you sort of swap back and forth with white spaces. And they just sort of outline the board having veto power versus the board having advisory opinion. And then, of course, with the carve-outs, defined. You added a fourth carve-out that's definable.
Did you guys, on the carve-outs, like or not like the option to give the year delay?
Well, that seemed good. I guess, you all took out the easy off ramp,
Yeah, we kind of,
which was kind of we felt it was a feature that allowed a town that's withdrawing and decides that they see perhaps the error of their ways to essentially come back in easily, no shame, no guilt, but also no having to go through the whole voting process. That's why that was in there.
you watch any of our testimony. I won't try to lie to you that we don't. So, because at one point we didn't know we took it out, basically. I mean, we talked about that we supported it, and then we took it out. And then later, when we said, did we disagree with that off ramp? And nobody disagreed with it. But then it was a timeline. We thought, well, looks like we're gonna have a conference committee. So because it does make sense. Why would we? If they wanted to have the off ramp, we thought they could. So we're kind of, but then it was getting complicated because they could choose a delay, they could choose to go forward, or they could choose the off ramp.
Right, right. And I guess, if we're sort of at a, when you're saying delay or off ramp, if you feel like we need to choose between the two, we can discuss that. I don't know, it's, we'll sort of have to pull out a pros and cons sheet to figure out, they both sort of accomplish the same thing in terms of giving a withdrawing town in the carve-outs either more time to put together a full plan or the ability to keep what they're trying to do easily.
Yeah, it was just time, we didn't have time to
Yeah, no, I understand.
get that correct.
So, that's the withdrawal stuff. The moratorium, we added in some of the language we discussed. We put the,
I want to ask some hard questions on the moratorium.
You have a question on moratorium? But just before we leave, the withdrawal and state board's ability to kind of force the reunification of the district, even if the town doesn't want it. Is the House position different between the carve-outs and chunk two, kind of those that might withdraw in 2 years, or is it just?
Again, we didn't have a deep discussion about, we have the philosophical difference of the state board veto power.
Right.
So we kept ours that doesn't have the state board veto power. So it's essentially the same language.
It didn't matter to you guys if it was.
Whether it was chunk two or carve outs.
Didn't matter. Okay, I just want to make sure.
The philosophical part was still the same.
Okay.
And frankly, the sort of issue of getting it through the House.
Right. Okay.
Now, I think what I'm hearing a little bit from you all is that you are particularly concerned about the Addison County situations. Because they did not go through that harder process.
Or a future situation that might get to the same point, right? That there is an ability to, I mean, they could always start the withdrawal again, even under our. So
That's true,
Yeah.
right. So you can get, that state board can say, no way, but then I think you wait and then you start the whole process again.
A 2-year wait.
Yeah.
on the closure language, I agreed with all the highlights on the staff page of this thing.
Yeah.
Except the one that said keeping the school building open should be determined detrimental to the educational opportunities of the students. That's kind of the reason they always get the closest school. So it's like, if you have that, then, then you'd have to decide who's making that determination that it's detrimental. And if it's the district that wants to close the school, then.
So you're saying that you find that portion a little too easy to interpret different ways?
Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't even clear initially what it actually meant.
Yeah, it was more to account for the fact that if a school suffering through declining enrollment reaches a point where, the ability for students to access services, have those opportunities like music, art, and all of that, because it can't be staffed adequately, would not be available.
Right, but isn't that the whole debate of because the town, at least the ones that I've talked to, say we think it's adequate. You don't need Russian or whatever. It's we think this is inadequate for our students, and it's the district that wants to close our elementary school. But the district is saying it's not.
Alternative language that sort of addresses that issue that you want to propose?
I didn't see how, because then you have to get into how do you define that would be detrimental? Because we're just going to disagree, or the town and the district are going to disagree. Because they'll say, well, if you close their school, that's going to be detrimental to our students because they're going to have to be on the bus or something. They're not going to be in the community or can't walk to school, whatever the different parts are. So I just found that one. That's the one where that's the whole withdrawal process to do that. I don't know if there's a way of doing that. But I do think, if there's health and safety of the school,
PCBs,
really can't. They tried to hire staff, they couldn't. Those make sense. And I think, our hope is, and this is kind of the reason why we do want the board at final say, that we're hoping that if it would be detrimental, that the parents in the town would vote to close the school, because they don't want it to be detrimental. Nobody's going to say, I want a detrimental experience for my children.
right?
All right.
So since there is a vote of this town, if they could prove that it was detrimental, then I would think the town would go.
I think I would describe us as open to your comments.
Okay,
And you may not have even picked up on it, the date. That's really there. Having been through one of these before, where I was accused of all sorts of heinous acts, just wanted to put it there as a point of conversation in case we couldn't agree on the language about it. So don't consider us as pulling a hard line on the 1 year. But I didn't want to all of a sudden bring in 1 year if we didn't have it in the proposal in front of us.
So what are we gonna do about the final check, the final checks on the withdrawals, all that kind of thing? How are we gonna make sure? That's, for me, that is, I think, the direction this committee felt really strongly on. And to quote Senator Bruce, also, I think, his comments on the floor and afterward, well, mostly afterward, who is going to make sure that things that are supposed to happen, happen, and things that shouldn't happen, shouldn't happen?
Well, I mean, ultimately, and it's in the pupil weighting report or pupil weighting bill, the Agency of Education has that authority anyway. And now we're giving them the stronger ability to make sure that all schools are providing adequate education for their students. Our feeling is that between the ramp up, the advisory opinions, the plan that has to be presented, that it's all there. And even if, voters sort of go contrary to the advice they're being given, the state, even today, has the authority to step in and say, you're not providing adequate education. But even more so with their improved staffing under pupil weighting. And when you get to special ed, of course, that's all federal law and literally a legally binding contract. So, I feel less concerned about that than I would normally. And we are in a certain, I want to see this get through the House. And I think that's, anchoring much of our concern.
that's the one thing that I thought was worth saying, that there is, at least I think there is some difference between the towns that might try to withdraw in 2 years and the three that already gone, because they're already through the process. I feel like we shouldn't pull the rug out from them and change the rules of the game while they're partly through it. So I could see you saying, okay, for future folks, there's a different set of rules in this final. The board can just say, you guys aren't ready to withdraw. So just an observation.
All right, so you're saying, well, what you're saying is that, okay, these towns have been operating under old rules. To change midstream doesn't make sense. So you're down to the Addison County towns. I thought that was more of your concern because they aren't the ones who had to come up with the plan before moving.
I am concerned.
That is
Senator First.
Yeah, that's kind of just my personal kind of how we're thinking about it. If there's
So and then you have the new rules for the future, and let me just say, I totally get what you're saying. But what you're talking about is the impact on the towns that are represented by the other 148 members of the House.
Yeah.
149. 100.
So
I forgot to count myself.
Okay.
And so that's, I would say philosophically.
But how many of those really are going to withdraw?
So I don't know the answer to that.
Nor do I, right? I mean, we did
But-
take some
but-
testimony,
and
nothing was
that's-
on the radar.
Nothing's on the radar, and it's not about how many are planning to withdraw, it's how many are planning to vote yes or no on the bill. And, you know, you have is the report still in there? On withdrawal activity and closure and all that? And, you know, perhaps that will shine a light for a future legislature on that. You know, again, when we went through this process on the floor of the House, and just sort of commentary we received, all of that, there was significant pushback on just what we were proposing. And we kept the state board in an advisory role, and in fact, you know, the first thing I said to folks when I presented the bill was, you know, at no point in this process that the state board or any other state power had veto power. And even that elicited, you know, an amendment that was frankly, it's probably the closest one we've gotten forward this year. So I think we're essentially, we all care about the same thing.
Yeah.
But we sort of have certain realities in front of us.
So what do you want to do? Do you want to talk about it some more?
Yeah, I think we should talk about it a little bit more, and talk to Senator Terenzini as well. You need 2 signatures.
But it would be good if Beth has time to do the ones that
That would be
highlight that
very
you are accepting of ours. And we could show people all of the things
Yeah.
you're agreeing with.
Okay.
I mean, something on this document is necessary, I think, for us to talk to our
Or a
colleagues.
different side by side or something.
If you don't mind, if it's all right with you, put it right on here, because, you know, we had a solid vote, but I know that there's concern upstairs, what direction we might be moving in a committee of conference, so it would be helpful to come back,
All right. So
see the changes in yellow.
So I'll ask Beth. I need her to blend in like the dates that you guys did. And she does not have in here the employee transition, which
All right, yeah.
we're okay with.
Yeah, all the parts that you're okay with.
You want those included in, even though we're not really proposing any changes?
Well, I guess what you could do, you could do it 2 ways. You could take your House version and write it as if it's being amended, or take the Senate version and do strikeouts. But you're not adding anything. You could just say, here's the Senate version of just what we want taken out.
That would be helpful, that would probably.
Here
be
is
most
the
helpful.
Senate version.
And here are your edits to the Senate version.
All right.
That'd be a great way for us to
So
see it.
it's all just strikeouts, right?
It's all just strikeouts, but then putting back in.
It'd be almost like we have the highlights of what we changed years, and then you do strikeouts of which
I mean,
of those changes.
I guess, I don't want to make too much work for Beth if
Yeah.
we've got the resource in front of us.
I think it's just taking some of this, putting them together,
All right.
just so we know which of the things you're agreeing with, because right now it's not clear. Other the small things.
Yeah.
The 45 days, you said yes, but sometimes there's some smaller changes.
Does it make sense to just go through this column all the way through and see where?
I mean, I think actually, you know, I think given the time, I think that probably just knows it.
Yeah, this is a little bit, I'd prefer not to work from this if you, I mean, it's just,
But I
if we
think
can, she could completely pull from that and give us a sense of your proposals of amendment to what we passed. And that would be clear, and that would make, I would feel more comfortable knowing what I was gonna do also. And I think we're okay on time to work on this tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the off ramp, I'm going to include, because you expressed some interest in it. And we'll put in the delay language that you folks created, because I don't think we have any objection to that.
The asking for a delay thing, for the
Yes.
carve out?
Oh,
Yeah, at the start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just need to see it, and I think it'll help, again, talking to our colleagues, what you really just want to edit in our bill, you know, on
I mean,
this. I
I'm
know
telling
it's,
your colleagues, you know, it's just the big one main concept.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not sure they care
I
about
know,
the
yeah.
finer details, but absolutely, absolutely. We'll kill a few more trees on this one.
you're supporting the forest.
That's right, I'm totally with you. We have to right now, forest products.
and honestly, it's just for some of us, having gone through so many bills in these past few days, I just don't want to make any mistakes. So it'd be helpful. And so, yeah, that would be great.
So let's see, do we have Beth tied up with anything? Do you guys ever tied up with anything more?
We're not 716 past second reading, that's
Yeah.
your miscellaneous education bill.
Yeah.
We are probably third reading tomorrow or on Wednesday. It might be the last thing you guys get. We want to tidy this up and we want to make sure we don't need to. There is and I'm sure we would never get to it, the nuclear option on this, send some stuff to Stowe and do some moratorium stuff with Addison County. But I just want to make sure everything's cleaned up and ready to go before we send. That would be our last vehicle really, is 716. If for some reason, and I'm sure we'll be fine, we can't get to where we need to be on this.
You have the funeral for H.456.
We have the funeral for H.456. I know, yeah. Which will happen, the funeral itself will probably happen sometime tomorrow.
That's my answer.
Do we have to attend?
It's optional.
Well, you know, that's the thing about 456 and other things. You never know what could come back to life. Let me leave it there. That's that magic 716.
We'll look forward to sending it back with amendments for you guys to deal with on Thursday.
Oh, don't you worry. It will be the very last thing. You will see it as we are starting our cars.
All right, so what time do you want to schedule for tomorrow?
When you're for one.
We're on the floor
We're
at
on the
10.
10th.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Let's do you want to try to do it before?
Let's do it at 9. Does that work for you?
Oh, we
I
can-
don't
we-
know if it's gonna be realistic for
Okay.
Beth.
No,
to have
that's-
all those
yeah, yeah.
changes.
Oh, yeah.
I just, yeah.
So we're on
I
at
wanna be
10.
respectful.
You're on at 10?
Yeah, we're on at 10. Maybe come in here.
Sure, let's do that. Let's shoot for me.
Yeah.
That'll get that time.
And then we'll go. Could even be a little bit later. Yeah. Yeah, let's shoot for noon, and if Beth isn't ready, we can always talk to her.
Yeah.
I think it's just gonna be a major cutting and pasting.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so too. Yeah.
And we have a couple of votes that might be close to our, they're not going to skip out.
Yeah, that's right. Tomorrow we are gonna probably have a couple of votes that might be close. That's right. So yeah.
But for killing crows tomorrow or not.
Are you guys taking that? Did you?
I don't know. I lost track of these things.
Yeah.
That was I think I got the most notes and emails. about-
On that one?
On the crows.
The crow, it's shocking.
The crow log. Yeah.
Big crow.
Thanks a million, Beth.
All
All right, thanks.
Really appreciate it.